It's primary day in 4 states. We're closely following Graham Platner's bid for Senate in Maine and the crowded Republican field for South Carolina governor. CBS's Robert Costa sat down with Vice President J.D. Vance. The Veep used the state of negotiations with Iran. And fresh off the successful Artemis 2 mission around the moon, NASA announces the crew of Artemis 3. What this means for the planned return to the lunar surface for the first time in more than 5 decades. Hello, I'm Ed O'Keefe in for Major Garrett. If I sound a little hoarse today, it's because we had a busy night last night at Madison Square Garden. President Trump was there. This White House reporter was tailing the president, picked up a little something that we'll leave here on set. Normally it's San Diego sports gear for Major, but this New York Knicks fan's going to leave that right there. Look, it is Tuesday, which means votes are being cast somewhere in America. And today it's 4 states, Maine and South Carolina, where we'll head momentarily, plus contests in Nevada and North Dakota. Most attention's focused on what's going on in the Pine Tree State, as Democrats appeared poised to officially choose Graham Platner as their guy to take on Republican Senator Susan Collins. Every 6 years, Collins is on the ballot. Democrats try their best to unseat her, but nothing has worked so far. There's been intrigue and support building for Platner, yet Democrats are divided over whether the military veteran turned oyster farmer is their key to stopping Collins from winning an historic 6th term. But Platner, as you likely know, is facing fresh scrutiny for past behavior, allegations he sent sexually explicit messages to other women shortly after his marriage began in 2023, and alleged, quote, unsettling behavior by Platner towards women he dated. One of those women described him as toxic and abusive. He's denied physical abuse and suggested the allegations are politically motivated, and he's acknowledged struggling with PTSD and alcohol during what he called a very dark period in my life. Should he win tonight, Maine's Democrats will have chosen a candidate facing allegations similar to those made against many other Republican candidates and office holders in recent years in different races across the country. So does it neutralize or cancel out the issue of a candidate's character this year across the country? That's one of the big unanswered questions of 2026. But in Maine, at least, it appears enough Democratic primary voters are set to back Platner, despite his past, believing it's more important to change their Senate seat from red to blue. We have primary team coverage tonight. CBS News congressional correspondent Caitlin Huey-Burns is at Platner headquarters in Blue Hill, Maine. CBS News chief Washington analyst Robert Costa is with me here in Washington. CBS's Skylar Henry is in Greenville, South Carolina, and our executive director of elections and surveys, Anthony Salvanto, is in our New York studio. But let's begin with Caitlin up in Maine. Lovely time of year to be up there. And Caitlin, to our opening point there, what is the bigger priority for the voters you've been speaking with? Condemning the Platner scandal or flipping the Senate?
Hey, Ed, good to see you. I mean, this is no Madison Square Garden, but it is the next best thing. Maine in June. Happy for this assignment here. I mean, we were paying attention to this race before these most recent controversies broke out, because this was the race that was going to help determine the balance of power in the U.S. Senate. And now it is also going to be a test of how much voters can tolerate when it comes to these candidates and getting their own priorities, their own policies, their own party to succeed. And that's really what we've been hearing from supporters of Graham Platner today and throughout the weekend. As we've been here, we were outside a polling location earlier this morning. There were a lot of people coming to vote in this primary, and most of those voters told us that they were willing to look past these controversies because they had their eyes on control of the Senate. Take a listen to some of these conversations.
Listen, I don't care who he's texting. What I care about is what's going to happen in Washington and how he's going to help the people in Maine improve health care, better jobs, lower rent, all of the good things that we need for the state of Maine.
They're disturbing, and we've weighed them and talked about them, and we're not happy. But I believe his statements that he's evolving, as we all are, and he does seem to have a penitent heart.
Platner is a very imperfect candidate. However, I think it's so important that the Democrats capture this Senate seat that I'm willing to vote for a candidate whom I think is quite imperfect.
All right, so you heard it right there in that last bite. A lot of people we talked to acknowledge that he's not a perfect candidate. Some express their own personal reservations about supporting him in light of these allegations and controversies that have come to light. But the bigger picture for them was being able to flip potentially this U.S. Senate seat. And this is going to be a big battle here in Maine. It's no easy task. Even if Platner wins tonight, which he is expected to do, he's got to take on Susan Collins. And no Democrat has been able to beat her in 30 years, Ed. So they are preparing for the idea that getting through this primary was the easy part and the hard work really begins.
Yeah, and we should point out Senator Collins running unopposed tonight in the Republican primary. Caitlin, have fun tonight. We'll be in touch with you as the results come in into tomorrow. We turn now to Robert, who's with me here in Washington. You spoke last night with Vermont's Bernie Sanders, sort of the godfather of the political left, the spirit animal for so many of these progressive candidates who are running again this year. What did he have to say? Well, actually, I will set this up. Let's listen to what Sanders had to say about the situation facing Graham Platner.
So I think when you look at politics in general, there are no saints. In the United States Senate, people can argue about this aspect of Graham or another, but to my mind right now, we need allies in the United States Senate who have the guts to take on the big money that is dominating this country, who have the guts to say that every American is entitled to health care as a human right, who have the guts to say that maybe we don't give tax breaks to billionaires, but demand that they start paying their fair share of taxes. People who have the guts, and in his case, from a very personal experience, that we don't go into wars unless we know what we are fighting for and unless those wars are based on truth, not lies. I'm supporting Graham Platner.
There are no saints in the United States Senate, he said. He's probably right about that. But what else did he have to say about Platner? Is there a red line he's not willing to cross if further allegations come out? And what does he make of how Republicans are taking him on?
Ed, to paraphrase that Hunter Thompson quote, if you buy the ticket, you take the ride. And Senator Bernie Sanders was one of the first, if not the first, major figure on the left, major politician associated with the Democratic Party, a longtime independent who caucuses with the Democrats. He got behind Platner's campaign last year. And this is someone who is saying, I'm sticking with him. And he sees Platner as part of this group of candidates he has endorsed nationwide who are more outsider in their persona, more progressive in their political bent, anti-establishment, a little bit rough around the edges in terms of how they deal with the Democratic Party, how they talk about Wall Street, a little bit more economic populist in their message. And we see in Senator Sanders somebody who's still trying to pull the Democratic Party to the left. His Fighting Oligarchy tour in 2025 got enormous crowds across the country. His political future at this point, probably not going to run for president in 2028, but it's clear with Platner and others, he's trying to create a farm team of those who are in his image politically. And so he's sticking by him. And you see, this is really part of a bigger story in American politics. It's been almost 10 years since President Trump, then candidate Trump, dealt with the Access Hollywood scandal and questions of character bubbled to the surface. And we saw President Trump, then candidate Trump, barrel through that controversy. And barreling through controversy is, as you said at the top, really now a mode for many politicians, right or left.
Right. I mean, and it's been 30-plus years since Bill Clinton did it. So, you know, this issue of does it matter anymore, you could argue voters have been saying for more than 30 years, no, it doesn't necessarily, if this is someone they agree with. Stick around. You've had a busy 24 hours. We have a little bit more of your work coming up. But I want to turn down to South Carolina and Skylar Henry, who is in Greenville. Good to see you, sir. There are several big races in the Palmetto State tonight. Let's start with the governor's race, another one that tests how much weight an endorsement from President Trump carries. What can you tell us about the gubernatorial primary?
Yeah, it's a fascinating race, Ed, for several reasons. For one, given the amount of folks that are considered viable candidates in this race. We know some of the names that are, more known out there. Congresswoman Nancy Mace, the lieutenant governor here, Pamela Evette, who has the Trump endorsement, as well as Congressman Ralph Norman, to name a few. The other part of this race that is so interesting is that there is no clear frontrunner, even with a Trump endorsement. We heard from the president just yesterday, who took part of a tele-rally with Evett alongside Senator Lindsey Graham, who is also running for re-election in this state. The president calling Evett both a fighter and a friend. We will see how much juice the president has going forward and how that impacts voters throughout the day today, and we'll see what happens when polls close tonight. But I think given the fact that it is such a tight contest at this point, it makes it likely that we will see a June 23rd runoff. I think this is a bit of a litmus test, if you will, too, not only about the Trump endorsement, so to speak, but where the GOP really wants to be right now. We know that some of the candidates that are out there have all at one point or another aligned themselves with not only the president, but his vision. But in recent weeks and months, especially when you look at a Congresswoman Nancy Mace, for example, who's walked out of lockstep with the Trump administration, especially putting pressure on the administration to release the Epstein files, for example, or to look at foreign policy, for example, the situation happening in Iran. I think those sorts of things will be interesting to pay attention to in terms of what voters value and what that says moving forward as we look ahead to the end of the night.
So a five-way gubernatorial primary likely to go to runoff, as you said, later this month. Real quick, on the Senate side, Lindsey Graham running unopposed, but who's the Democrat likely to face him?
Well, we will see. There's a group of folks that are out there. There's a guy that, a state senator out there that is interesting that we could potentially see give him a bit of a challenge. The other folks that are out there, there's Mark Lynch, the businessman who's here in Greenville, who some see as a different option than Lindsey Graham, someone who isn't necessarily for the foreign wars and the like. So we'll see what happens with that. But Graham, again, going into his fourth term, should he be reelected, is widely viewed as the front runner in that race.
All righty, Skylar Henry in beautiful Greenville, South Carolina. Good to have you with us here on this primary day. Let's turn now to Anthony Salvanto up at CBS News election headquarters. So let's turn back to Maine, Anthony, because there's been this discussion about whether that Senate race is one the Democrats could potentially take in November. What now, should Platner be the nominee as anticipated, does that do to Democrats' chances of winning the general election come November?
Well, I don't think anybody thinks it's going to be a slam dunk, Ed. You see what I did there, bringing it back to your Knicks reference?
Thank you.
Basketball.
Well done.
Look, let me run through a couple of numbers for Maine. First one is 7, the rough percentage by which Kamala Harris won Maine, which is to say this is why the Democrats see this as a potential flip. 1, Susan Collins is the Republican in the battleground Senate states this year who is running for re-election in a state that Kamala Harris won. Okay, that adds up to maybe the Democrats see a chance. But at the same time, here's another number, 13%. Back in 2020, and I know that can seem like eons ago in politics, but that's the percentage of Democrats that Susan Collins won when she last ran. For context, that's more than twice the number that Donald Trump wins of Democrats. So she has some crossover appeal. And I'd add another, and that is 65, which is to say there are a lot of voters in Maine who are over 65. It is an older state of the 50. And, you know, that means there's a lot of voters who have voted for her before, all of which is to say it's going to be difficult, and that's why this is going to be a competitive race. When you've got voters who voted for her before and crossover, that's what's on the table here, Ed.
Okay, so from sea to shining sea, let's head back out to California and take a look at the current numbers there. The Los Angeles mayor's race is now set.
Yep.
But why hasn't Steve Hilton necessarily advanced yet in the governor's race to take on Javier Becerra?
Well, he's still in second, but a couple of things have happened. I'm going to circle Tom Steyer's number here at just over 22. When this started and they started counting, he was just under 20, just at around 19. So he's made gains as more votes have come in. We've seen that not just in L.A. mayor, but statewide. A lot of Democrats who held on to their ballots, dropped them off on Election Day, mailed them in. As those get counted, he's done relatively better, made gains on Hilton, cut that lead down now. I think there's 1.5 million votes, sorry for my handwriting there, still to be counted. If that feels substantial, it is. He's down about 200,000. He's got to make that up. He is running out of runway, as we say. I suspect we'll get more clarity when those states, or when those counties, rather, start reporting more of their votes later tonight around 7, 8 p.m. Eastern, Ed.
All righty. And that map is a great reminder of the political geography of California, how the Inland Empire and those other areas skewing Republican, at least in this crowded primary field. And, of course, all the Democratic votes there around L.A., San Francisco. Steyer doing well up north.
Yeah.
We'll see. The trickle continues.
And he's counting on a few of those counties.
If you had 7 days to mail in your ballot, at this point, we should have everything counted by the end of the week?
What happens is, yes, but what happens is they still have more time because they first have to validate the ballot, make sure, the code, barcode matches, signature matches, and then go through and process it. Don't forget, too, there's millions of them. It's a huge state, Ed.
Big tease, California is. Anthony Salvanto, we thank you. Good luck tonight. Going to be a late one. Let's move on, however, to the Middle East. President Trump says the U.S. must respond after Iran shot down a U.S. Apache helicopter. It crashed down near the Strait of Hormuz. Both pilots involved in the crash are safe and uninjured in a pretty remarkable way. We're going to get to that in a moment, because joining me now, CBS News Pentagon reporter Eleanor Watson, and Robert Costa still with us here to discuss his interview with Vice President Vance. You spoke with J.D. Vance and the Second Lady Usha Vance today, before the president posted on social media about potential U.S. retaliation. Let's listen to some of what the vice president had to tell you.
Right now, I feel that we are in a position to get a deal that is good for the United States economically and that really does deal with the Iranian nuclear program, not just now, not just while Donald Trump is president, but for the long term, to where my kids can say when they're adults, Iran is not going to have a nuclear weapon. That's the goal of the policy, and I think we're very close to achieving that goal. But we still got some wood to chop, and we're going to keep doing it.
You say very close. How soon? Could the deal happen before the midterm elections?
Oh, absolutely. No, I think we're going to know a lot before the midterm elections. Look, I think that the deal could happen in the next week, but the deal could also happen months from now.
Are the Iranians stringing President Trump along, in your view?
No, I don't think so. Again, I think their system takes a long time to reach consensus. I always hear people ask me, do you trust the Iranians? And what the president has said is, I don't trust anybody. I don't trust anybody. What I do trust is my own ability to negotiate. I trust our administration's ability to negotiate, and I trust the enforcement provisions that we're going to get in place.
So the president's repeated his claim that a deal with Iran's days away. Vice President said it to you as well. What is ultimately the end game here for them?
I think Vice President Vance's comments earlier today, we taped that interview this morning at the vice presidential residence, is indicative of what I'm hearing from across the administration, that they know President Trump's in the driver's seat when it comes to these negotiations. But Vice President Vance is hopeful, but not setting a firm timeline, that all of these events, whether it's a skirmish in the Strait of Hormuz, whether it's an escalation in the view of the Iranians from Israel or from the U.S. or whatever it is, there are a lot of tangibles, variables, that are in the mix at this point. But the vice president was hopeful that something's going to happen. And there's a view that President Trump, at the end of the day, is a deal maker and that he's going to be able to close. The question is when and how, and that's still TBD.
Much more of this interview airing Sunday on CBS Sunday morning, ahead of the release of the vice president's new book.
The vice president has a new book coming out called Communion, about his religious journey. Right. He grew up in an evangelical household, became somewhat of an agnostic, and then he converted to Catholicism.
All righty. Ellie, you're here because I wanted to talk about retaliation. What potentially now, as the president says retaliation is necessary, could that look like? Remind us what we have there in the region ready to go if need be.
Well, the question really is, the president has said he's going to respond, that they must respond to this attack. We're learning that an Iranian drone did take down that Apache helicopter. Both pilots were rescued in kind of a historic mission by this unmanned surface vehicle, the first time a drone's ever led a rescue mission like that. So both pilots are safe, but the president is promising to respond. The question is, does he respond in a way that reopens the bombing campaign or settles for more of a tit-for-tat strike retaliation to kind of keep this ceasefire on life support? He's been willing to keep that ceasefire going despite previous violations to give more time for negotiations to bring the war to an end.
But about this drone, you say it led the rescue. Did it literally pluck them out of the wreckage, or did it find them and point to where they were?
It found them and then transported them to a different area of the water.
A drone picked them up?
Yes. If you look at the video of the type of drone, we're told it's a Saronic Corsair Navy drone that's been in the region since March. This is the first time it's been used in a mission like this. Found the pilots, transported them to another area where a helicopter picked them up and brought them to shore. That is remarkable, but it's also notable that the Strait of Hormuz is still pretty dangerous, that it was necessary for this drone to make this rescue mission because Iran is still threatening the Strait with missiles and drones.
Much more about that, I'm sure, in the coming days. Ellie Watson, Robert Costa, watch that interview on Sunday. Thank you both. Still to come on the Takeout, my conversation with Ontario's Premier Doug Ford. He's in Washington arguing for a tariff-free trade agreement between Canada and the U.S. Also, why an actor from the hit 90s soap opera Melrose Place, kids, if you don't know it, ask your mothers about it, is working to empower citizen-led legislation in key early voting states. Andrew Shue joins us live to discuss his initiative. And a first look at the Artemis 3 crew, the 4 astronauts who will go into space as part of NASA's final mission before its planned lunar landing. The takeoff takes off again in 90 seconds. Welcome back to the Takeout. The U.S., Canada, and Mexico are working towards renewing their continent-wide trade agreement with a July 1st deadline looming. The leader of Ontario, Canada, Premier Doug Ford, is in Washington today pushing for the pact. He's a friend of the show. You may remember he outraged President Trump last year with his anti-tariff advertisements and for how he temporarily placed a tax on electricity being sent into the U.S. But now he's striking a more conciliatory tone. We caught up with him on Capitol Hill this afternoon. Here's part of our conversation. Premier Doug Ford, good to see you again.
Great to see you, Ed. Thanks
Welcome
for
to
having
Washington.
Me. Yeah, thanks for having me on.
You have come to town for a series of meetings with industry leaders and
lawmakers.
Yes. What's the pitch?
Well, the pitch is building Fortress North America. Just putting a ring around North America, making sure when we protect North America for countries like China, then our economies grow, jobs grow. Investment grows, production grows, cost of goods go down. So that's what we're promoting. We're promoting that we can supply the U.S. as much energy from Ontario that they need, critical minerals. We have more critical minerals than anyone in the world. And our economies are so integrated together.
The idea being that if Canada and the United States and Mexico pooled their manufacturing resources to compete against China or to anticipate protectionism by China, then perhaps the three economies would prosper?
Oh, yeah, would it ever? If we're able to get this deal signed, the economies will grow, the likes of which both countries have never seen before. And it just gives everyone certainty. Because there's so much uncertainty, people want certainty, they want stability, because there's investments on hold right now in the U.S. and in Canada until we get this deal done.
And there is hope of it being achieved by July 1st, but some concern that it may require a little more time. What's your sense of how quickly this is moving and whether there will be a new agreement?
Yeah, and I'd love to see it July the 1st. Is it possible? It's possible. Is it likely? Maybe. But it might extend a little further than July the 1st.
You did have meetings with lawmakers, Democrats and Republicans?
Both.
And what's the reception like?
They want to get this thing done because each one of their districts represent a lot of manufacturing. We're the number one customer in the world to the U.S., and the U.S. is our number one customer. So we need to get this deal done, put certainty, and then investments will come.
I've noted in reading the Canadian press that they point out this is a slightly more diplomatic overture by you after the moves last year to remove American goods from provincial stores, the advertising that was run that needled President Trump. Why the change in tactic, and does it have anything to do with the fact that Canada appears now to have gone 2 quarters with negative growth, therefore technically in a recession?
Well, I guess that'd be the exception to Ontario. We've seen tremendous growth. Back-to-back months, we've seen 42,400 jobs. April, another 42,000 in May as well. And so we're seeing tremendous growth right now in Ontario. But we need to work together. And there's going to be a time, and the time is right now, that the U.S. Needs our energy. We keep the lights on and businesses open with the lights on. 1.5 million homes and businesses in New York State and Michigan and Minnesota, and I want to ship more energy down to the U.S. as China wants to take a strong hold on all critical minerals around the world that they have right now, to the exception of one place, and that's Ontario. I put legislation in that would ban any Chinese companies to buy any of our critical minerals. Who do I want to send our critical minerals to? Our closest friends and allies, the U.S.
You yourself, as a provincial leader, are not scheduled to meet with Trump administration officials. That's being handled by federal officials. If you, though, given the war of words you've had with the president, or the sort of rhetorical battles of the last year plus, you had a chance to talk to him now, given the state of the world, given the state of the economies as they are, and given the anticipation for this trade deal, what would you say to him at this point?
I would say you signed a great deal last time. Let's move forward. If we have to tweak it, let's tweak it, because livelihoods of people in offices and backs of factories rely on the two-way trade with Canada. And when China, again, is controlling all the critical minerals, your closest friend and ally has all those minerals and more. We have the energy to build your data centers and your manufacturing facilities. We're critical, and we're so integrated, our economies. No matter if it's the auto sector, the parts go back and forth across the border 8 times before it gets assembled in Ontario or in the U.S. somewhere. And we've been the closest friends for 250 years. We feel like we're part of the family. And we need to get this done for the sake of both economies.
Your raising concern about China comes, however, as your prime minister was attempting to open up the Chinese market to more Canadian business and investment. How are we to see that contrast?
I couldn't agree more. We should have never let those vehicles in. Over 49,000 EV vehicles. They're a direct attack on our auto sector here and in the U.S. I just totally disagree with that. The Prime Minister and I see eye to eye on the majority of things. That one we don't see eye to eye on at all.
The idea of bringing Chinese electric vehicles into Canada.
That's correct. 49,000 of them.
Now, I think many Americans may remember you are the guy that last year, when this trade war between the United States and Canada began, you started pulling American-made liquor and wine from the shelves of provincial liquor stores in Ontario. Is there any plan to start buying American again?
I would love to put those bottles of liquor and wine, bourbon back on the shelves, but we have to get a deal. These tariffs are really hurting our steel industry, our aluminum industry, our auto sector, dairy sector, lumber. So we just need certainty. Once we have certainty, we're wide open. I encourage everyone to ship up their alcohol to Ontario. And once that deal's done, we're the largest purchaser of alcohol in the world. It's called the Liquor Control Board of Ontario, and we welcome them.
You can catch my full conversation with Ontario Premier Doug Ford on your favorite podcast platform. We thank him for taking the time. We have breaking news out of the Middle East. U.S. Central Command says they've launched self-defense strikes against Iran following the downing of a U.S. Apache helicopter that we were telling you about moments ago. Eleanor Watson is back here with me. What do we know, Ellie?
Well, we just got the statement from U.S. Central Command that the self-defense strikes, they're calling them, against Iran began at 5 p.m. I just spoke to military officials who said they're ongoing, and they are bigger than the previous self-defense strikes that have been taken in retaliation for previous exchanges of fire during the ongoing ceasefire. We should note that since the ceasefire began in April, there have been shooting from both sides, but the U.S. has never brought out the forces it put there at the beginning and has about 20 warships that have squadrons of fighter jets. We have these Apache helicopters in the region, and now they're participating in this retaliation that the president said he would order earlier today.
So the headline is they're underway still, and they're larger than the retaliatory strikes we've seen before.
That's right.
But at this point, it appears to be more of the tit-for-tat kind of response, at least based on their statement, saying that this is proportional based on what was in direct response to yesterday.
It's a proportional response, and it's put out by U.S. Central Command and not by the White House or the Defense Department, which kind of goes to tell you that it's kind of more yet bigger of the same that we've seen in the past month.
All right, Ellie Watson, I know you'll be tracking this. Our team's in the region as well. Thank you. Next, a 90s soap opera star hoping to usher in a new era of political unity. That conversation's next. You're watching The Takeout. Welcome back to The Takeout. Andrew Shue is perhaps best known for his role on the hit 90s soap opera Melrose Place, but in more recent years, he's turned his attention to civic engagement. He's leading a new series of forums hoping to promote public participation in government in 3 key states. The forum is now active in New Hampshire, South Carolina, and Nevada, 3 of the states expected to vote first or earliest in the 2028 presidential primaries. The online platforms receive feedback from community members and look to identify bipartisan solutions to what participants consider chronic or easier to solve problems. And Andrew Shue joins us now from Charleston, South Carolina. Andrew, thank you so much for joining us. This is a really interesting project that you guys are obviously trying to launch here ahead of the next presidential cycle, but also at a time when I think there are a lot of Americans eager to find ways to work together. So give us a sense of exactly how this works.
Yeah, well, I appreciate you having me on, Ed. This is an opportunity for Americans who are so frustrated with what they believe is a broken and maybe possibly corrupt system that they are shut out of, and give them the platform to come together, aggregate their voice, and turn that into a new political power. It works where you come online, you're able to submit ideas, and you can deliberate in in-person meetings, online meetings, and it ends with an in-person assembly with a representative body that has to reach 70% consensus in order to put something forward to the legislature. We're working with legislators, we're working with experts in each issue, and the good news is that people are showing up. We have political balance, we have real scale. I can tell you about some of the numbers, but I think we're on to something. The American people kind of had enough with partisan politics, and they realized that it's gotten so performative that it's no longer solving the big issues of the day. And so we wanted to test it at the state level where we felt we could get our arms around it and we could show how this could be credible enough. The media would cover it, the legislators would take it seriously, and the people would show up. So I really believe this could be, if we can do this well and do this right, this could be a real fix to our division and our dysfunction.
Give us an example of the kind of issue, say, there in South Carolina, maybe out in Nevada, that people have sort of united around and said, this is what we want our legislators to take up.
Yep. So it started out broad as probably 25 big issues, but they've narrowed it down to 4. And it's different in all 3 states. The number 1 issue here in South Carolina, I'm right here in Charleston right now, the roads and infrastructure. In Nevada, it's actually housing and affordability. And in New Hampshire, it's education and property taxes. But they have many different issues they want to dig into. So it's going to be interesting to see, where the legislation actually comes from. So it's a process. We don't know exactly how it's going to play out. That's the beauty of this. When they say, oh, you have an agenda here, it's like, no, we have an agenda for the people to create their agenda.
And the idea is to sort of signal to the lawmakers in both parties, hey, we've helped you build public consensus and opinion on this. Please take now what we've shown you is popular or should be dealt with and get it passed already.
Yeah, but the difference here is this is not an academic exercise where we're just giving guidance. There's citizen assemblies that have worked overseas, and we've had them here at the city level where that guidance is given, but then they don't take it up. We're actually going to have a citizen lobby because we've had hundreds of thousands of people participating at the front end. We think we'll have tens of thousands of people being part of that citizen lobby so that we actually get something passed. So this is a process that goes from participation that could be 5 minutes or 5 hours on the platform, leading to a citizen lobby that ensures that something gets done. We need progress. The people are so frustrated. They're really concerned about what's happening with AI. And it's just time that the American people come together, kind of end our cold civil war. And like I said, people are showing up. If you build it, they will come, and they are coming.
Let's consider this a to-be-continued conversation, because as we get out to New Hampshire, Nevada, South Carolina, with the presidential stuff starting next year, we'll find you guys, and you can give us some more palpable examples of how this is working. But we appreciate you sharing early work here of the forum, Andrew Shue. And like I said, we'll do this again. We'll keep talking about it.
I appreciate it, Ed.
All righty. Thank you all. Coming up on a busy news day here, the House passes a reconciliation bill to fund the Department of Homeland Security, and our political panel weighs in on that and much more. You're watching The Takeout. Welcome back. Moments ago, the House passed a $70 billion piece of legislation funding the Department of Homeland Security. This is what they call the reconciliation bill, where you only need majority support to get it done. In this case, in the House, all Republicans voted in favor of the legislation, while all Democrats and California independent Kevin Kiley, who for now is caucusing with Republicans, opposed it. This legislation is set to fund ICE and Border Patrol for 3 years, and it now heads to President Trump's desk. This is a significant legislative achievement for the White House and for congressional Republicans who are trying to get this issue of immigration handled before the midterm election. So let's bring in our political panel, Democratic strategist Kendra Barkoff-Lamy and Republican strategist Sarah Chamberlain. Good to see both of you. We don't need to dive into the nitty-gritty of the legislation other than to say this now, in essence, has addressed and maybe puts aside the issue of immigration, which, of course, got tied up in what went on in Minneapolis, the death of 2 Americans who were protesting what their government was up to, but now done through majority support. What does this potentially do to scramble the midterms?
Well, the best part is it's done through the president's term, too, for 3 years. So that helps. And what they're trying to do is kind of put this on the side as we go into a contentious midterm. Immigration now is kind of on the side and hopefully off the table in a positive way, which the Republicans desperately needed after the incidents you mentioned as we came on.
But I imagine this allows Democrats to rewrite the ads and say, look what they've just approved.
It does, and it also allows us Democrats to say, don't send them to the Election Day polling spots where people are going to go vote, because I think that we have seen some reports that there has been threats to send ICE to those places on Election Day, and I think that would not be a great use of government funding. I think a lot of people would take issue with the legality of that, and I think it would be bad for our country as a whole to send ICE to that.
There was another meeting of the House Oversight Committee today regarding the Jeffrey Epstein affair. Longtime assistant to Epstein, a woman named Leslie Groff, was brought in to testify. Kendra, what do you make of the progress or maybe the lack thereof in this investigation, despite the fact that it's generated so much bipartisan concern?
I think the overall takeaway is there's finally something that's happening, which is really important to the survivors who have asked for accountability and for justice for years and years and years. I think the issue that we are seeing is that there is still a politicization of this issue, which is wrong for them. I think they want answers, they want justice, they want transparency, but they shouldn't have members, frankly, on both sides of the aisle, using them and using this as a go back and forth. I hope that what they got from Ms. Groff was honest. My guess is once we see the transcript, it will be, we shall see. But they should bring in every single person who was in his orbit. Any enabler should be talked to by them and by what's going on in the state of New Mexico as well.
Sarah, it seems as if the president, at least, has shaken off the attention of this or the scrutiny. Is that a fair assessment?
Yes, it's a fair assessment. And people have kind of stopped talking about it, though the Republican Party really is trying to get to the bottom of this. It may be slower than people would like, but they are trying to get this, like, who is affected by this, who was involved. I mean, they're attempting to. We got a little piece of information today that she said she put together phone calls with President Trump. We kind of suspected that, but she said it wasn't on a regular basis. So we knew President Trump knew Epstein. But they are attempting to get to the bottom of this, however slow it may be.
They are, but I don't know if the current Attorney General is, who has closed the door on any acting Attorney General.
Who'd like to be full-time Attorney General.
Yes. Who has completely closed the door, though, on filing even any potential criminal charges or looking at this from a criminal standpoint. And I think that's frankly just wrong, because we don't know what they're going to find in the House oversight. So I think they should not be closing that door either.
I want to ask you, Sarah, Spencer Pratt has now fallen out of contention for the general election in the LA mayor's race. This was a campaign that seemingly came out of nowhere and was very much generated by online content and online outrage, which clearly didn't manifest enough votes or on-the-ground support in the city of Los Angeles. But I'm curious if you think there's anything more Republicans can learn from what he was doing, either in terms of getting attention or in terms of trying to flip the script in states where maybe Republicans haven't succeeded before,
well, I think
or at least in recent history.
I think the members of Main Street especially are really focusing on back home and the issues of back home, which is what he was focusing on, the fire, obviously, which was a total disaster for LA. So the members of Main Street, the lesson they took out of that is, okay, let's do more social media and let's really focus on the issues going on in our districts versus maybe what's happening in Washington. It's been a very interesting learning lesson. I'm sorry he came in third. It would have been interesting to see him go into the runoff. against the sitting mayor.
When you guys talk to clients or candidates who are running and they see the use of AI as aggressive as it was with him, are they comfortable using it in that way? Are they concerned about how it can be used to manipulate voters?
I can only speak for the members of the Republican Main Street Partnership. Depends on their age. If they're a little older, they're a little more concerned about it. If they're younger, they get it. They use it a little bit better than the older ones do. The older ones kind of leave it to their staffs. There's a lot of growth that has to go around AI because people don't understand it and they don't understand where it's going. The leader in AI in the House is a member of Main Street, Jay Obernolte, and he's trying to educate the members because he actually has a master's degree in AI.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
They want to use it?
Well, I think that it's an interesting tool. It's a smart tool, but I also think that Congress at some point needs to step in and figure out like where is the line on regulation because there's been none. And it's going to be an important piece of moving forward AI in general. We see it moving way faster than I think anybody anticipated. And so I do hope at some point Congress comes in and does something to also regulate it.
I hope they will. I agree with you.
We'll see. Kendra Barkoff-Lamy, Sarah Chamberlain, thank you both. Good to see you on a busy Tuesday. We appreciate it. Coming up, the next step towards NASA's return to the moon, a look at the 4 astronauts selected to serve on the Artemis 3 crew. You're taking off here on this Tuesday with the Takeout. Welcome back to the Takeout. NASA has announced the 4 astronauts they're planning to send back to space as part of the Artemis 3 program. The crew members are Commander Randy Bresnik, pilot Luca Parmitano, and mission specialists Frank Rubio and Andrew Douglas. They're set to launch next year and is NASA's final mission. This is set to be NASA's final mission before its planned 2028 lunar landing. CBS News space contributor Christian Davenport joins me now. He's covered NASA and the space industry for decades. We are both members of the Washington Post Alumni Association, having toiled over there for several years. Good to see you. Welcome aboard. I hadn't formally had a chance to congratulate you on that, but we're glad to have you with us. What do we know about this crew and this historic mission, what they're going to be doing?
Yeah, so it's let's talk about the mission first. I mean, this is a bridge between that Artemis 2 mission from just a couple of months ago that flew around the moon, didn't land on the moon, flew around it. First time astronauts had been in the vicinity of the moon since 1972. And then the mission after this upcoming one is going to be a landing on it. This is a test where they're going to take that Orion spacecraft and they're going to dock with the 2 lunar landers, the spacecraft that are actually going to ferry the astronauts to the surface of the moon and then back up before they come back. They're going to do those tests, though, on this mission, the Artemis 3 mission, in Earth orbit. And so today what NASA did to great pomp and circumstance was name the crew of that mission that are going to be testing out these lunar landers.
And there is talk about ramping up the cadence of this mission, in essence, trying to speed things along?
Well, yeah, and that's what NASA is saying. They would like this mission to go in 2027 ahead of a landing in 2028. But you have seen the news that one of the companies involved in this, Blue Origin, which is the company owned by Jeff Bezos, just a couple of weeks ago had their New Glenn rocket, which would be vital potentially to this mission, just explode in dramatic fashion, obliterated the launch pad. NASA says they're going to be ready in time for this, but we shouldn't discount the fact that the other provider, which is Elon Musk's SpaceX, they've made a lot of progress with their Starship vehicle, which is their lunar lander, but it's never flown people. It's never left the vicinity of Earth. It's never landed on the moon. And so while they're putting faces, to this mission, whether they'll be able to do it next year and then have a lunar landing by 2028, I think a lot of people are frankly skeptical about that.
So if I'm hearing you, there's issues with the launch pad and there's issues with the 2 vehicles not even really being ready yet.
Absolutely. And the backdrop of all of this is we are in a space race with China. And actually what happened with this, NASA was so concerned with the Starship vehicle, which had initially won the contract, they opened it up to have Blue Origin compete with them. And then Blue Origin had their rocket explode.
All right. Christian Davenport. Those astronauts, they get a chance at Artemis 4, right? Since they're kind of getting teased in this early round.
Well, they'll get this mission and then maybe another lunar landing to come.
All righty. Good to have you on board. And I know we'll be talking a lot about this in the years to come. That does it for the Takeout today. The Daily Report's coming up next. I'm Ed O'Keefe. Thanks for being with us.